Welcome to the Dr. DJ podcast, sponsored by LGBG. I'm your host, Dr. DJ, here with another special episode. We are here in season 2, and we are here with another special guest. I have Denval Lawrence. I think someone that everybody should be knowing his name right now. I'm gonna give him an opportunity to introduce himself. I've made a strong connection with him, participating in the Bron and Noir Society for the men's flash mob. Supporting efforts in terms of the women's flash mob that just passed. We also have this kinship and relationship around us also being professors in higher ed. And so that's just a little bit, but I just want to kind of take today and talk to Denval about his life journey. And we've made some strong connections and it will be exposed today. I'm working on intros.
I was like, that was great. I was like, shit, that's a better intro than I can give.
So I appreciate you coming today. I appreciate you just also including me in many of your activities, and some of the activities that you're providing right now are definitely creating more vibes and growth for a lot of us as young men, educators in space and professional spaces. We've kind of reached out and we talked about kind of navigating not just higher ed, but some of our challenges.
Yeah.
And before we kind of get deep into that, just kind of give an opportunity to kind of tell more of your story, how you got to New Haven, relationship, and everything else, and then we'll dive deep into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on the show,
absolutely.
Man. Where do I start? I think my journey is quite like any other man of color, young man of color. We kind of learn along the way and sometimes don't have people to guide us. And sometimes when we do have the people to guide us, we're not in the space to be guided through growth and the adversity and the things that people tell us to watch out for, etc. But I grew up, I came from Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, came here when I was 4. There's a couple of things that were instilled in me from a younger age, just really like hard work. I watched my mom work 3 to 4 jobs, 2-3 jobs at a time, raise 3 kids. And even though we fell on the poverty line, there was no assistance for us for a woman that was working to make ends meet for 3 children. So I think that impacted me in a way where the hustle is just unmatched sometimes, and I pick my head up, and I not running a comparison against anyone else. I just sometimes pick my head up and I'm like, oh wow, I am a little farther along for my age, and that's kind of just always where I've been. So yeah, Meriden kid, went to college at Southern Connecticut State University, graduated from there, and was really like looking to like make money and be successful. And one of the first places that gave me a good start was a telecommunications company, and I pretty much, like, again, same type of work ethic, worked hard every single year, and I started to notice a few things in terms of the demographics. But the higher that you propelled yourself in terms of your work ethic, the less people around you that looked like me, and that began to bother me. And I think also the people that did look like me, the age range was huge. Like, there's always a gap. And I think that's one of the things that, you and I connected on as well, is like, being a professor, being a young Black professor is unheard of, especially in some of these institutions that are predominantly white. And what that really means is that there's not enough representation for the things that are akin to who you are in the student body for some of our institutions as well. So yeah, and I know I'm like all over the place. I'm trying to go in chronological order here, but I worked for the telecommunications company for 4 years or so. Did fairly well there. Was promoted a few times. Loved the recruiting, campus recruiting, and I quickly realized that like people, like there's power in people, man. Like there's power in college students who are just super eager to go do the thing that they're passionate to do. There's college students that don't know what they want to do, but they're just eager.
I love eager students.
And work tremendously hard, and that's who I become an advocate for. As a few folks have been an advocate for me growing up, and that certainly has helped me along the way in terms of like my professional maturity, acumen, navigating different spaces. And I think my organization now, Bron and Noir, really serves as a platform for young professionals trying to tap into college students more to get them equal access to my events so that they can see the people that are doing really well, so that they can see where they want to be 5 to 10 years from now. So Bron and Noir started with just an idea that I had literally walking down the street with a bunch of men that looked like me in suits. And it was powerful. That dream was powerful. That dream was a representation of the power of us coming together, which I don't see often. I see, cliques and groups of men. I certainly see fraternities. I see, for our sisters, I see sororities. But I don't see outside of that, and sometimes outside of the politics of those respective groups, I don't see people organically coming together just to have a good time, giving one another their flowers, celebrating one another, looking good together, feeling good together. And that's why I wanted to utilize Bron and Noir to serve as a platform to curate those types of events here in Connecticut.
So I'm gonna run it back. So make sure I'm key on everything. So one thing you bring up so important is about organic relationships, and I think we've cultivated that just by happenstance, just seeing each other at events and that happening. Going back to the beginning, you said Meriden. Was it Maloney or Platt?
Maloney.
I got you. I work out there, and I support some academic advising. So leaving Meriden, and there's a large Black and brown population actually in Meriden that I wasn't as aware of at the time. And so I'm leaving there, going to Southern, getting into, and I think because you do multiple things. You're at Southern, you're also at Yale, you're doing HR, you're doing IT. I heard some things about coding and other things you're working with. I know I've seen you everywhere in terms of the Yale summits and different venture opportunities.
Yeah.
How did you kind of get into that? Because you do seem very much like a Renaissance man. And I have to kind of say that because you do a little bit of everything. You're doing the arts, you're doing the fashion, you're in the IT, you also do coaching. I see you posting stuff with your son with football. And so you're in many different spaces, but also, and I say Renaissance, where you're also able to kind of have this kind of larger view and experience. Like, how did you kind of get to that? Because where we're going to get to, you could understand the magnitude of your presence in particular rooms. Because you are actually viewed in this particular way.
Yeah, I mean, man, I've never been called a Renaissance man. I've never even thought of that term. So I thank you. That's extremely humbling. Man, like I said, like I grew up in a bubble. I had my friends. I have friends of mine that I've been friends with since 5th, 6th grade. So going on 20 something years. I call them my brothers. Didn't have a big family. And so my mom instilled like education and like the fact that like the more knowledge that you know or have is going to empower your future. And that's kind of the way that I raised my son. Like we have really deep conversations about how the more knowledge you have is going to translate to you being able to speak in many different kinds of rooms, and those rooms opening up opportunities for you to be exposed to different areas, of your life. And I think that's what's really important. I think throughout school, and it started at a young age, geography Bs, spelling Bs, medical terminology, anatomy, physiology. I prided myself on like knowledge, and I loved trivia, and I loved those types of like Jeopardy kind of competitions. And my junior and senior year in high school, I was first place in Connecticut for medical terminology, anatomy, physiology, like a bowl for medical careers. And that's when I feel like that's when I really realized that I can buckle down and assume, I don't know if it's a persona, but like allow myself to be submersed in things that are my passions and do it in many different ways, I guess, in many different industries. So always had a background in like medical terminology. Graduated high school, Maloney High School with my CNA certification. Worked as a CNA throughout college. Became an RA during college. Was always into technology. You know, we grew up in a generation where we were utilizing technology, hacking, downloading, LimeWire, all that stuff. So I think it's really like a a compilation of all of that.
He said we grew up hacking.
stealing
Pirating.
music, you know. But I think one of the things that I really think about is just my exposure to mentoring at the Boys and Girls Club, always going back to give it back, like share what I was learning. In college, going back to the Boys and Girls Club, in high school, senior year, going back to the Boys and Girls Club, where that environment raised me to still stay close to the community, no matter how far I thought I was ahead. And it really just got to the point where, like, every couple years where I picked my head up, going through my own struggles and my own trials and tribulations, I found myself get really in a circumstance like this, where someone else noticed something and they called me something and they did find something, and that definition is now attached, right? It was a positive definition that's now attached. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that is what it's called, right? And that's that. I don't know. I don't know if there's a better way to describe it, but in a nutshell, going through Southern, working at the telecommunications company, then paying for my MBA. So I really learned a hustle in a different way. Being like working, getting my MBA at hotel rooms while I'm traveling the Northeast for campus recruiting work that I was doing, then submerging myself in the IT world and networking for the telecommunications company, and really just loved like the merger of like IT, supporting HR, building the HR knowledge, which now translates to lecturing at Southern for various management courses. And yeah, like I guess that's the best description that I have for
So
it.
this will be a nice, good segue. So I think for a lot of what you've done is you've done a great job of setting borders that kind of that fit the brand.
Yeah.
And I use Renaissance as particularly as a moment because I think about, I remember you had a red suit on once, and I don't know if you had with a belt loop.
Oh yeah, it was double breasted.
It was something that we've seen before. It had your own flair, it had your fit, it had your style, like to the cufflinks, to everything else. And so I think like those details, and I think you are very detail oriented.
Yes.
Even the events that you've put on, you are very meticulous about what you choose to select yourself to do.
Yeah.
And when I say kind of the idea of setting these borders, that they kind of all complement each other, without being something that distinctly different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also part of that reality of seeing the way that you kind of scaffolded and laid out life and brought a lot of yourself back into the work. I also think about how we've talked about setting those boundaries.
Yeah.
And creating those boundaries and the reasons we create the boundaries, while also recognizing the honest truth is that we don't see ourselves in a lot of the places that we're in, and also the uniqueness of having ideas that people just have a hard time just being able to compliment and support, versus seeing it as some adversarial moment.
Yeah. Man, boundaries were hard. Boundaries have always been hard. I think some of the things that we learn as kids, respect your elders, trying to be open, right, in the business world or in academia, trying to be open to all thoughts, to learn more, to learn different perspectives, and trying to also empathize with where people are at and meeting people where they're at. And I think, as a professor, I think that's what we do pretty naturally as African-American men, as men of color who know what it's like to face different trials and tribulations, being first in our schools, being first through a specific program, and not really knowing how to navigate those various spaces. So now, coming back to those various environments, I always, when a student sends me an email or something like that, I always put myself in their position. And that certainly requires for me to let go of self and assume their persona.
Mhm.
And I think that that's what I'm really great at doing, paying attention to detail and observing other people. But then I've always had this, yeah, like I think the best word to say is like this cognitive dissonance, this challenge with self and protecting self versus trying to empathize with someone else and trying to help them out. And that's the crossroad.
That I think that was a learned moment for me as an educator, because I also thought about my journey.
Yeah.
And so the things that I felt were more difficult that required information or accurate or effective information that wasn't naturally just kind of genuinely shared. But I've realized that even at points when you become that educator, like we say, how do we become bulletproof? Like you empathize to a point, but someone is trying to leverage power.
Yes.
And that becomes,
you get burned. You get burned sometimes.
And so that's where these are the lessons that we learn.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time we talk about like life is always our response to the failures that we've experienced, but also how we respond to those failures at a particular time, because success is not a good model to make change.
Yeah.
Or expand. So we scaffold and we expand off most time off of our failures and seeing different areas.
It is sometimes not forgiving. It's not forgiving. The path of success is not forgiving.
And so how do you navigate that the unforgivables? I mean, like how do you navigate the unforgivables? Because something happens where something has to be set up, because I don't want to lose what I have.
Yeah.
I don't want my creativity to just kind of be like, I don't know, hijacked or manipulated into something else, because that's what we learned the business does. Capitalism does a great job of taking ideas, trying to repackage, then redistribute, not at the quality and quantity of what my original idea was.
Yeah.
And this idea of like the cost and the value of buying one's idea or buying away this kind of authentic thing that was connected to them as a way to just to monetize themselves or monetize their own images, or try to create more value, where I have to find it hard, consider it for you to be hard to understand your value and see individuals that want your value.
Yeah, man. I think that innovation and ingenuity is a double-edged sword. There's really no boundaries. It can be innovate, like taking an item or a product or an idea and remixing it 3 to 4 or 5 times to where the first remix was amazing, and then the 5th rendition of it is diluted, right? And I just give that example because I think that's where some naivety has happened for me. Just assuming the best of people. And when I first started Bron and Noir, I legitimately came into this like, this is a platform for everybody. And this platform is going to allow everyone to shine. And then I just started to deal with some folks that or entities that wanted just their platform to shine through Bron and Noir, because it's just gaining traction.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when I would have conversations with those around me, loved ones, folks that I know that are in my corner, that have been through it before. And they're saying like, hey, like you're being too nice. You're not protecting this platform. You are, and understanding me and getting to know me, you have to choose a side. Sometimes being nice is okay, like is fitting for the circumstance, but it's not the end all be all that's going to solve everyone's problems when you're looking to grow your platform in a way that allows it to continue to flourish and build with others, right? The way that you intended. I'm sorry, that's really bothering me. I don't know what that is.
I was gonna tell you what it was, but it's cool. But being nice, like I think we've kind of gotten through that. When does that change? When does that kind of recognizing when to use it, when to turn it on and off? When does the boundary need to be set?
Yeah.
Because I think you brought up a great point about iterations, and I think about obviously Bad Boys 3 is out, Bad Boys 4 is out.
Yeah.
So you see the iterations of the same movies done in a different way. And I use that kind of analogy with business where individuals see an idea and then they want to do the reboot. They want to, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's lost a large portion of its luster and taste.
Yeah.
Because individuals are trying to find better ways of packaging it. And sometimes it when it loses those particular things and you recognize it, I think that's what I'm suggesting is like that niceness leaves.
Yeah.
Because now the brand is not being protected because individuals are kind of trying to get things quickly to market.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I think me personally, Bron and Noir needs to embody like who I am first and foremost.
I like that shirt.
No, thank you. I love fashion. I love when we look good because it fights and counteracts the other narratives that are out there for us. And then I wanted to go deeper, saying, it's not about just men and women in suits looking good in a vain nature, but also these men and women are professors, attorneys, distinguished and esteemed people in our community in Connecticut that are making major contributions. As you know, and I know, some of these folks really work in the dark. They don't care to be seen. They don't care to be out there. And some of these folks love the limelight. But nonetheless, they are folks that are tremendously prominent, and we should hear their stories and or get to know who they are at my events, because it's tremendously important. And I think it's more important than the easily consumable negative contexts that are put out there about us.
So, and I want to add to that, and I'm actually ask a question because I wanted you to give out any of your secrets. So in terms of expansion and kind of learning the space, because obviously you're 40 under 40.
Yeah.
You've already been acknowledged for 40 under 40, probably going to be 30 under 30. And you've been doing this. And so I think learning those spaces, so understanding that when we show up, sometimes we don't always know everyone's intent. We know that they're in particular positions, and so you kind of bring the idea of the vainness and those that want to be in the limelight, but also having a community of individuals where we kind of have our own space and network to navigate finding an attorney, finding a doctor, finding a physician, having conversations about where the kid should go to school at, and I think those questions can be answered, and I think they. Obviously, we've met, and also, how do you see that expanding for yourself? Because seeing the men and the women, and then thinking about space. Because for us, we're well into where we are, and we can kind of continue to expand and collaborate. But it's also for a lot of us are parents.
Yeah.
And coming into that next space, what relationships become accessible? One, not burning bridges, but recognizing that go call your uncle.
Yeah.
Go call your uncle and ask that question, because right now I don't have it for you, but this person knows, and this is the space that they're in.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh yeah, that's a nice dress. You saw, and then you wait. You gotta wait another 6 months to go see that person again. So it's like, all right.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing with this platform and the way that I see it growing is just a simple example. First year, had a bunch of men from Yale University. Worked there 10 years, 15 years. Just introducing themselves to one another, never met. 2 African-American men, both working in IT, never met one another. And they work in the same building, close proximity to one another, right? Probably has walked past one another, but never knew each other's names. And you realize that you're now gelling or breaking down the barriers of a culture that exists within many institutions, academic arenas, corporate Fortune 500 companies, where people just go to work and come home. because their families are more important, especially at our age, right? Kind of segueing into what you're saying. And then I realized that in the second year, my son had said to me, a gentleman had come up to me and said, "Hey, brother, I love you." And my son is super black and white. He's like, "You are not family. Why are you saying I love you to my dad? I don't know you." And his son and my son, as we're both talking, they're both like looking at each other and looking at us. And he says, "We should get really comfortable with saying, that's my brother. I love you." And my son was like still trying to break it, like still trying to digest that. And I was just like, that's a beautiful moment, because his son immediately went to my son after that, and like they shook hands and they took photos together and stuff like that. And they were like a little crew of 4. And I quickly realized, man, it made me so emotional. I said, this platform is going to be a huge like metamorphosis and disruptor in our communities of breaking down those barriers to where society has gone from doors open, front door open, just come right in, to everyone has to protect one another. Everyone has to protect themselves and be for self and be for family. I think that there's still space, even this current day and time, where people are hyper aware of threats and things of that nature, where we can still come together and teach our kids that there is a safe space for them to meet one another, to learn each other outside of the typical environments of sports, because that's where a lot of us meet one another.
Ooh,
right.
So, and I was gonna say that moment that your son was having, I wouldn't call it a trauma-informed moment, but I was gonna ask you to kind of give context to, like, what's that feeling of kind of like you look at him like, yeah, he looked like me, he looked like he looked like someone I would want to know.
Oh yeah.
But when you go to sport, there's a hard thing between, I'd say, just me working with athletes, trying to get the scholarship, looking at the other person that's vying for the same scholarship, or we should both be able to get a scholarship, and then competition happens.
Yeah.
And it happens in a way that if you get 10 catches and I get 2, you might not advocate next week for me to get 10 catches.
Yep, absolutely.
And you take 2.
Absolutely.
So this option and availability of like, hey man, you look like you're gonna come take over the space. So so part of that protection, I think, starts, I say from a sports standpoint, starts there.
Yeah.
Because we understand that everybody's not gonna get the same carries.
Yep.
And now systems like we say running back by committee. So everybody who's a third down, first down, and as that is just as the analogy, but I see that metaphor playing itself out a lot, because the fact that someone else is in a room, it says that I can't get any more shots up.
Right.
And I'm not comfortable with that, because the 2 that I take might not be enough visibility for my opportunities to actually flourish.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, man, that's so deep, and I think that's what conditions us, right? In the first year of the women's flash mob, I got feedback from a young lady from a local city that was just like, I didn't grow up in a way where women gave one another flowers. I grew up where women were competing and fighting against one another. And it's the same way that we grow up in terms of sports. You learn that, at first it's fun. It's a great place to socialize. But into now, especially with AAU, 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school, high school, now it becomes extreme competition to where that extra minute of playing time correlates to 4 or 5 additional, 6 points, a highlight, whatever the case may be, that now allows me to shine more than you. And I think the difference is that the space with Bron and Noir is a neutral space for all folks to thrive. It's a neutral space for all folks to learn. And like you said, what I've gotten in the last 3 years, I feel like I now can be the guy behind the scenes that's saying, hey, son, go talk to that person, as I've been educated on things like trust, like building a trust for my son, different schools, like just the myriad of options that you have when you're truly networking in a capacity of building organic relationships, going back to what we were talking about, where friends become family. And that's the deeper context outside of the fashion outside of us all looking good and partying, the deeper context is you're now building a true sense of community. Not and I'm not by no means am I slighting anyone else or being shady at all, but not in a facade where a lot of other platforms are built with the pure intention of bringing us together, but one person is the profiteer.
I think, and I'll say this for your event. I'll give an example. I'm gonna shout out to Chief the Poet. So when we did the men's flash mob the last time, I think he had to go to either Essence or he had to go. He had a big award. I think NAACP or BET, but he was performing again and getting a large award. And he called. He goes like, can I know where you got that suit from? And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, because part of it is like, but some folks like, yeah, don't. I'm not telling you my tailor. I don't tell you where I get my clothes. And I think that was such a great moment in relationship. One of the things I thought about, we were kind of talking about the sport analogy and kind of setting the boundaries. In your personal opinion in navigation, with your business and everything else, what becomes more important? And you scale it. Well, I think about the difference between competition, winning, and getting better. And the reason I say that, because part of what happens when we talk about that last minute with competition, is that you can compete a lot and win, but didn't get better.
Yeah.
Maybe endurance, but in the ways we think about it, your game didn't improve. You kept working on the same skill, because maybe it was higher than other people. So you're competing and winning, or just winning. So sometimes those that kind of jump into spaces, because they know they're going to get a win. They kind of have, okay. But you didn't get better. Versus saying, most athletes I meet never will reach a life where they actually were the best that they ever could be.
Yeah.
Because that's not really part of that full capacity. It's about, I may never reach my full capacity, but I'm kind of focusing on this idea of learning to compete with the perspective of the outcome is to get a win. Versus saying, I've lost every day because I didn't get better today. I kept doing the same thing I'm normally going to do, and it's winning for me now.
Yeah.
But you didn't get better. You practice the same thing that you knew every day. And I'm like, then when does the space come where we start to work on getting to our better self or the best version of ourselves, or even we talking about lifting your maximum
self? Yeah, man. My opinion, and this is just my example. I think anyone that knows me can vouch for me and say that I don't focus on competition. With Bron and Noir, I don't focus on money. The first year we had 40, 50, maybe 60 max men show up. I was tremendously hard on myself. I said immediately, I need to give myself a longer window to advertise. I focus on where I needed to get better. And I think that's the way I've always been. I'm never satisfied. And I think like, it can be a sickness at times.
Oh, it is a sickness. That's what they told me last week. It's a sickness, like
because of the fact that I can burn myself out sometimes just over analyzing and revisiting something that is so minuscule and such a distinctive detail, but like that's who I am as a person. I think that just translates to literally this platform continuing to grow and gain more traction. And I think when people see that you have good intentions and are not like, and there's nothing wrong with profiteering, like get it where you can get it. But I've been in the red the last 3 years. And and a part of me is proud of that because of the fact that I know that I do something that I'm passionate about as Southern and take those funds to fund another passion of mine. And I'm okay. I like this year I am learning that, I got tapped by someone that said, ask for more money because the money is there. You're being too modest. But it's one of those things where I think the pride of the hard work and trying to make this aspect better. Oh, okay, I got that feedback. Yeah, you're right. I do need to make that aspect better. I do need to define that. It certainly has opened up my eyes to not being so naive and putting myself in my bubble, because that's what I easily do. I wrap myself in a cocoon. I work hard. I go through a metamorphosis. I get a little bit better or a little bit bigger or a little bit more visible. Other people notice. And I think people are attracted to that. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing. But what I don't want to do is ever compete. And I know it's inevitable. I know it's inevitable. But I don't focus on competing, because then it becomes about self again.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot of great things for myself, personally, professionally. And I got that.
Mm-hmm.
But the platform gives me a satisfaction. That is a form of self, right?
Yeah.
But the platform is for people.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are connecting, distributing their business cards, having intimate conversations that blossom to friendships, that blossom to, oh, okay, I see what y'all doing over there at this event. I know that was from my event, and that gives me personal fulfillment. So if I have to be selfish about that, then I'll continue to be selfish about that aspect. But I'm never out there to compete. Yeah.
So that's a great point. And I think you said it, and you also sent me, we talked earlier offline, the grief of not asking for what you need.
Yeah.
So I had to throw that in, because I mean, doing an event and recognizing how humble a lot of us are in terms of just folks giving space, giving time, and but also making sure you ask for what you need. Because for most of the times we're normally, I'll say, when I have combines and you have other society events, that we're kind of using our primary income to fuel and create this energy for it. But understand that model can't work forever.
Yeah.
And that it will have to grow. It will have to create different partnerships. But also, I think we were talking about cutting off. But so before we get there, this idea of the grief of not asking for what you need.
Yeah.
Because I'm tight and I don't want to be in a situation, but I'm like, we know our value, but we can't ask for a number.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to define the valuate or give an appropriate valuation of what you're worth. It's hard to do that when I've worked to be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
The first year, it was myself and my fiance's funds.
Mm-hmm.
I think I asked people to sponsor, but then I quickly realized, I said, if I can't really define what's in it for them to make it a mutually beneficial relationship, I'll post the logo. Don't worry about the money. I also didn't, because it's another passion of mine, I wasn't so worried about the money. And so that translated to not wanting to worry about like the business operations stuff, like the taxes, I'm not in it for that. Like I would and I even asked someone, a good friend of mine, to hey, you manage the Eventbrite, because I don't want to deal with any of that. I'm here for the people aspect, because people are my passion. That was hard. That piece is hard. I think overcoming that hurdle, I need to hear it. I need to hear the feedback of, hey, ask for more money. Hey, you can actually take this, allow it to be a nonprofit type of event under community outreach, and pay yourself back for the time that you're putting in. That took a young lady at the last event to actually say that to me. And I was like, you know what? But still in my mindset, I'm thinking ahead as my former self of being in survival mode. Okay, yep, all right. So I can get some kickbacks. I can get some money back, under the green aspect, right? Not being in the red.
Yep.
And then I can pool that for the next event.
Yep. And
I can take care of advertising and the videography and the photography and the DJ without having that piece come out of my pocket, right? And I think that's when I realized, you know what? That is a good thing. That is something that I can't view as, hey, just because I take money from this person or this entity, that I have to necessarily be in bed with them.
Yes.
And be tied in a way where they can now dictate whatever it is that they want or whatever, right? Because that was also a piece that I was concerned about. Yeah.
Appreciating the silent partners, having the partners, and thinking about sponsorship and relationships that does not change the flavor of what originally was there.
Yeah.
But also, I think one of the things that I thought about when you said that was about, like when we're having these events, or more so having just culturally, what we're not taught in terms of like setting. We talked about boundaries and borders and boundaries.
Yeah.
That a better term for how we think about it in business and management, we think about our boundaries are set through our ability to negotiate.
Yes.
And it hasn't been part of a lot of our cultural fabric to actually understand how to explore negotiation.
Yeah.
And I think about that one in our connection with higher ed, when you get that job and you're like, I can't tell you that I'm happy to just be here.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure I get what I'm supposed to get.
Yeah,
but I'm happy to be here, that you're in this moment where it's like, nah, like how can I get what this needs to happen?
Yeah.
Because someone else is kind of thinking in their balance sheet, like, how can I give them enough and make them how can I give them enough and make them feel satisfied without giving them the bag?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's just what they can't give you the full bag.
Right.
But they could give you more than what you asked. And so you kind of like, I always have that kind of like internal moments, like kind of like when you have like shopping remorse and you kind of walk out of negotiating, like, you left something on the table. And now you can't go back and get it. I got another thought. They'd be like, nah, we're solid.
Close the deal. Right.
So, and I think part of that happens in terms of not just how we negotiate business and opportunities and relationships, but how we negotiate with ourselves and what we're going to allow. And it's hard because I left the door open to something that should have closed.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, in the past, I was just like, I'd rather not. I opt out. And then I realized after the first year, I was like, I need help. I felt like I got hit by a bus after the first event. It was a satisfying feeling, but it was like legitimately 3 hours of sleep the last 2-3 days leading up to the event. My brain doesn't shut off because I'm like, I hope I don't miss this. I hope I don't miss that. And after that event, in the second year, when we left Jack's Steakhouse and sat down by the cigar shop, I was legit like, all right, it's time. Jack's was packed. I was like, I need a bigger space. I need a bigger venue. I didn't know what that was going to look like.
Jack's was packed.
And as I was thinking ahead, I was also remembering like, you know what? I really didn't get to live in the moment of this event. Huge shout out to Frank Brady because he saved me in that event. I had been running around, left the men's flash mob, did a women's shoot after for the teaser content and advertisement promo for the women's flash mob that just happened in May. And me and my fiance were headed down the street, and he not only got this dope ass shot of us walking down the street in stride, but he showed up to that event and he could tell like I was drained. And I said, yo, do you mind? And I legit said, I think 3-4 words, do you mind? And he's like, bro, I got you. I was like, oh my goodness.
That's
like,
Frank.
And that's the power of like, I think me seeing him since we attended Southern, him seeing me, and like we didn't really talk like that. There's always acknowledgement, like, bro, you're gonna be somebody. You're doing things, and I think he just stepped in a way that like it was just again organic collaboration. I didn't really need to say much, and he helped to like save that event because I was done. My voice was done on the mic. I was done, and that's something that I really appreciate. And continuing to have more and more thoughts, hearing the feedback about how great the event was, how great it made people feel, how people were connecting in all these industries, how there's going to be like future like synergistic relationships with collaboration. I was like, you know what? I can help to form a committee. I can help to do different things that incorporate other people that help to appease their mission and aligns with the platform as well. I just never really, you never really can account for what that means in terms of letting other people in. And in different forms of fashion, right? And all the different industries and spaces that I'm in, I've been burned every time I let someone in. So then it automatically, right? I go back into the cocoon. It's easy for me to work by myself. I don't have to worry about deadlines. I don't have to be the project manager
I
because
don't
I'm the
have to
project
trust
manager
anybody. I don't have to
of
trust
myself.
anybody to be honest and
Absolutely.
integral. That is what you want.
Absolutely. And yeah, like that process of going from I need help to do more to accepting the help and then trying to manage that is what's hard for me because I'm such an executor and I can do things on my own and learn on my own and manage the deadlines. And I know when the deadlines are going to be because obviously I'm in control of all that.
Mm-hmm.
So a part of that is the consideration of relinquishing some control, allowing it to be what it's going to be as well, because you can't control the outcomes.
No, you can't.
And then also being a safety net just in case that person fails or doesn't come through. And I'm like, okay, I'm the backup plan. I think that was hard to digest at first because I'm like, I could just do this myself and not have to worry about any of that, right? But it's a beautiful thing because I think out of that, you go through a transformation of not being so reactive. And I think that's huge for me. That's huge for me. A lot of people that know me know I don't have a lot of patience for nonsense. I don't. I think I'm a really nice person.
We got some synergy.
But I don't have patience for nonsense. And I'm not condoning violence, but I will put hands on somebody because there's still that aspect of me that I've tamed from my younger years. And I think that it's so important to allow a growth mindset to take place in this space because it's allowed me to really have some beautiful moments of mentorship with people and giving people access to aspects of like the operational values, the logistics of their event planning. And people walk away saying like, thank you so much. I'm just so happy to be a part of it. Shout out to Elle with L.K. Styles.
Mm-hmm.
She was a tremendous, tremendous co-partner in the Women's Flash Mob. And her and I even had a conversation throughout the process where I was in a process of trying to understand where she was with the things that she was doing. And I attacked it in a way that she didn't appreciate. And I thank her for the grace. And I thank her for us being able to just have a heart to heart. And we just picked right back up because she's a beast. And she continued to I think she was in a mindset of having to prove herself. And I was already in the mindset of, that was my bad. I already know that. I already know what you're capable of and just go do that thing. And so when you have all those beautiful moments like that, right? In business world, we call it forming, storming, norming, adjourning, right? The 4-step process of collaboration. You realize that the storming is necessary. Within reason.
Because you can't burn the house down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have to build it over.
But the normal, organic headbutting of different ideas, still in alignment, the normalizing that you're not going to do it the same way that I am. And you're not going to do it in the same time frame. But the way that you did it was rich. And the way you followed up with all those people after the fact was rich. And that's something that I wouldn't do. So then you start to learn from other people. And like I said, it becomes a synergistic relationship where I'm learning different processes of doing things and they're learning for those that help me out in this example. Yeah, I think that I had to learn to accept that I'm now allowing for a different process to take shape and not doing it all by myself and relying on other people. But it was all for my growth and the platform's growth.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think a large portion of us being able to pull the layers back and also academically, you talk about the 4 processes. And I think when we think about the things that we want or things that we want to have trust in. We want to have trust in our mentors.
Yeah.
But also one thing, and I think that I've seen it be very challenging, is actually finding business partners.
Yeah.
Finding a business partner that shares your idea or does something just slightly different than what you do, and you go into business together, and are able to kind of support each other through those habits.
Yeah.
Because to your point, we know that someone's not going to do something different, but being able to sit down 3 or 4 together and have a committee meeting and saying, what is the best option in the way we're tackling this?
Yeah.
We can all have a different idea, but be able to be open enough and listen, saying like, I can see this vision and how this would go, and I'm not critiquing what you're saying as wrong, but if we're going to do it and we're going to be at this venue, we have to think about these particular logistics.
Yeah.
Because your event's going to be different than mine, but right now we're together, and so
Right.
sometimes they disband because they're like, I'm like, you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
Because trust and patience come at the same time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Where time has to do its own thing, so that one, trust can be established.
Yeah.
And many times we don't have the patience to be trusting something that look like a dud, but I'm not willing to see it in the time that it takes them to kind of figure out the thing that we kind of like may know. Like, I know what this is going to look like. And I'm trying to bring them on so that I don't have to go back and have this grief moment of like, I had to get rid of this person because they just couldn't get it, and I'm freaking out because they're not just hearing what I'm saying what we're going to do.
Right.
And now they're going to do it, but they're kind of doing without this level of energy and like and trust that like I can see what you're doing.
Right.
That's a hard part
It is.
of the process of finding that business partner, finding that mentor, and then also just learning the effective ways to collaborate. Everybody talks about it.
That's the main piece, the effective ways of collaborating, right? Because every task that's associated with painting the bigger picture is its own unique opportunity to build rapport. And so when you break down all the tasks that it takes to curate an event, something that no one's seen before, or something that people have seen before, but we're doing it in a community building way, there is a lot of values that you're not considering, that someone is going to approach it maybe apprehensively. Maybe they weren't ready to take upon that task. So it's a battle of perceptions. It's a battle of like, I know that this guy has high expectations, and I don't know if I can live up to that. But I do know how to execute that, but I don't know if I'm gonna execute it in a way that he's going to appreciate. And I've come to know that in my personal life, right? And I think I'm trying to allow for those tasks, those opportunities where we build rapport for people to feel like they have some degree of autonomy to handle it the way they're going to handle it. And again, it was a learning process for me. It was a lot of biting my tongue and not being so quick to send that text message or write that email or what have you, and letting it simmer a little bit and trying to reread the email to, again, go back to what I did so well naturally when all the chips weren't on the table.
That empathy.
Empathizing, understanding where they're at, meeting them where they're at. And like I said, it becomes a beautiful process. I shout out Elle because the way that her mind works and the way that she sees things and the way that she looks at fashion it's a completely different lens than myself. And some of the ideas that we're coming up with, even for next year, after going through the forming, storming, norming, and adjourning with the event commencing, it was beautiful. We now look at each other as brother and sister, and like, this is going to be a beautiful thing for both the men's and the women's flash mob, and potentially the multicultural explosion that happens in the academic space at Southern as well.
So, I mean, we've hit the nail on the head, and I think we probably could go for another hour. I love the events that you're doing. I love to see you promoting the IT and computer science space. Also being a also professor in management, and then also having your PhD aspirations. And so I'm grateful that you even decided to come today
No, I'm thankful. So
to
grateful
share
for you having me.
all the things that you're doing. And I have nothing but faith that this will continue to grow
Yeah.
in the ways that you want. And hoping that this thing or interview has a moment where it's like people understand the process,
Yeah.
and understand the character, and the commitment and level of excellence to just kind of bringing the things that you bring to the table.
Thank you. Yeah.
That I would say are natural.
Thank
That
you.
it's not like, it doesn't feel perform. It's like, this is kind of what it is. This is the standard, and it kind of provides a blueprint for individuals to kind of look at and have aspirations. And I hope individuals are comfortable aspiring for someone else that is one of their peers to kind of move in the ways that they
Yeah.
do. So I say that to give you your flowers, and acknowledge all the things that you've done, and also highlight the people that you've acknowledged, Frank and Elle, as strong individuals that continue will be part of the process. But in closing, I want to make sure you get the last word. Tell everybody where you're going to be at, where they can find you, what's coming up next, because I foresee a lot of big things coming up, and also I know I'm assuming that you're going to be somewhere in the Black Wall Street event too. Like, so just I can kind of see that happening.
Yeah. So I actually have not thought about the Black Wall Street event, but I do have some interesting conversations scheduled up ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really, really big dream for Connecticut, for the Northeast, in curating an event that will be for all people from multicultural backgrounds. And I'm hoping that comes to fruition in 2025. But until then, I am continuing to stay on the same cyclical track of working on the Men of Color Flash Mob
Mm-hmm.
for this fall, shooting for end of September, beginning of October. And I'm looking to, right, you talked about in the segment, like where this platform can grow. I hope to do a whole weekend that satisfies local businesses, that satisfies all my beautiful partners that have helped me out, that have saw the vision from the beginning. Major shout out to June Archer. He, with the 100 women of color and the 100 men of color, we had a really great conversation these past, continuing conversation these last couple of years. And we're developing a partnership to where he will continue to represent Bron and Noir, and I'm representing 100 Women of Color in this synergistic way where we can grow both of our platforms and give both of our platforms that exposure. Outside of that, man, I'm looking to enjoy my summer. I'm looking, I realize, like, when you're doing a lot of these events and doing the prep work and all that stuff, I realize that we don't spend enough time with each other without the transactions,
Mm-hmm.
without the business stuff or what have you. And so I'm really excited for us to just like hang out with one another and a lot of other like-minded people this summer. And hopefully
Don't tell them where we're going.
No, I will not. That is sacred. That's sacred for sure. But yeah, I think I'm just excited for what people don't know about me is that I love Connecticut.
Mm.
Another aspect of Bron and Noir came from my passion of like people leaving Connecticut to go enjoy multicultural events.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you don't have to leave Connecticut for that. Like, we can create them here. And I felt some type of way because I hated driving to those places. I hate driving to DC. I hate driving to Baltimore. But I quickly realized that, you know what? I think I have the resources and I know a lot of influential people for us to create those types of events here and keep people here, keep our economy thriving, and allow for other folks' platforms to thrive and grow with those collaborative events in the future.
What's the IG so they can catch you?
Yeah. So they can follow me at one Mr. Lawrence, number 1 Mr.Lawrence on Instagram. Bron and Noir also has a page, Bron and Noir Society on Instagram as well. Stay tuned for more content regarding Bron and Noir and a lot of things that we're doing with the platform in the future.
I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the Dr. DJ podcast, sponsored by LGBG. Let God be God. I am your host, Dr. DJ. Until the next time.